We're looking at the FlyPro XJaguar, the Holybro Shuriken X1, and the QuadQuestions QQ190 ready to fly quadcopter. And these copters have been on my channel for the last couple weeks. I've been flying them, I've been building them, I've been tuning them, talking about them, and it's time to do a wrap-up where I help you decide which of these copters is the one that you most want to buy. And I'm kind of tempted to hold off on this video because I have at least one more copter right now that I just finished building that I think also compares against these, and I think it deserves to be in this roundup. I have two more in the mail that haven't gotten to me that also deserve to be in this roundup, and the simple fact is that if I waited until I had reviewed every possible copter on the market that deserved to be in the roundup, they'd all be out of date before I even got to it, because I'm not the kind of guy who just flies something one time and then writes a review. So let's start by talking about these copters' similarities. They're all in the Pure X form factor. They all have the same sort of basic form factor of their frame and the same rough motor layout. They're not all the same size. This is a 190. This one is, I think, closer to a 210. So this one's a little bigger. But they're all basically the same in terms of their weight distribution and their motor layout. They all have a square motor layout and a Pure X form factor. The XJaguar has to be called out from the other two for not being a ready to fly. This does not come pre-assembled. You have to put it together. And it is relatively easy to put together because it's got the snap together stack, as you saw in my build video, but you do need to be able to solder the motor headers onto the PDB. That's something that anyone who works with quadcopters probably should be able to do without too much trouble, but it is a definite distinction that this one you have to assemble, and these two, all you have to do is put the props on, and they're ready to go. Well, that's actually not entirely true. This one, you do have to install a receiver. So you order this one, it comes with no receiver, and it comes with a plug, and the plug is pre-installed. All you have to do is plug your receiver in and stick it on here. So technically that's not much to ask. Put a little piece of foam tape and you're ready to go. You do, however, have to find a place to put the receiver. I've got a little micro receiver in here and it does not have great range. If you were to try to put a full-size receiver like an X4R or XSR or even a Spectrum satellite, I think you would have a little bit of a challenge. You wouldn't need to do anything fancy in terms of soldering. You just plug a header in and it plugs right into the pins on the receiver. But where are you going to put it? It's a little tricky to get it in there, especially if you're the kind of novice builder who is going to be buying a ready to fly. So technically, the most legitimately ready to fly is this one. This is really more of a bind and fly, I guess you would call it. It comes with the receiver pre-installed, ready to go. You order it with a FrSky or an Spectrum receiver or a Futaba receiver, and it comes, and all you have to do is bind it, and you're ready to go. As far as quality of components goes, the QQ190 definitely wins. It has premium components from top to bottom. The carbon fiber is fantastic quality. It comes beveled and polished. It's ready to go. There's all kinds of fancy things that QuadQuestions has to say about the way the layers are laid and how strong it is and how wonderful it is. And remember that QuadQuestions made frames before they made a ready-to-fly copter, so that certainly is their area of specialty. The electronics here are TBS Power Cube with BLHeli ESCs. This is absolute top-of-the-line electronics. The only part of the copter that lets me down is the camera. I talked about that in my review video. They offer an upgraded camera, and as I said in that review video, I highly recommend that that's the one that you get. The only questionable thing here in terms of quality is the motors. Now, they are T-Motor motors, and T-Motor makes some very good motors, but they also OEM some mediocre motors, and it's hard to tell which these are. This is not obviously a rebrand of something like a T40 or a T60, at least not to my eye. I'm not a specialist in motors like somebody like Quad McFly would be. So I have no reason to think that these motors are like bad, but also they're not obviously premium motors in the same way that the TBS Power Cube is just obviously an absolutely premium piece of kit. That all being said, there's nothing that I'm aware of that is inferior or defective about the parts on these other two copters. And in fact, if we look at, for example, the Shuriken X1, the motors on it are in fact T-Motor F40 2600 kV motors, and those are some spectacular motors. Those are very good motors. I would be hard-pressed to say which of these copters was the fastest around a track, because just raw speed is not the thing that necessarily makes a copter fastest on the track. I feel like the QQ190, it's very light, it's very nimble, it handles very well, but my gut feeling is that it doesn't have the same top-end speed of the Shuriken, because the Shuriken has beefier, just more powerful motors to begin with, and they're also 2600 kV motors, which are going to make more thrust. They're also going to draw more amps than the 2400 kV motors on the QQ190. Between the QQ190 and the Jaguar, I'm not really sure. The Jaguar certainly felt fast, and I would be really hard pressed. I think it would be a close race as to which one of those was going to be fastest. Mind you, that's fastest sort of in a straight line around a track. You know, so many other things come into play, handling and so forth, that I think any of these copters could win. But if I had to bet my money, I think that the motors on the Shuriken are going to make difference and put it in the lead in terms of just, you know, pure speed. If the Shuriken is differentiated by, let's say, just all-out speed and total integration, everything in this one board, then the QQ190 is differentiated by the fact that you do not need to own a soldering iron to maintain it. And that is absolutely true. The motors come with bullet connectors already on them. The TBS stack is completely set up with these micro connectors here and these nuts. You can replace any component here simply by loosening the nuts, lifting the board out, and putting a replacement board in. And everything else, the camera and so forth, uses connectors. You can maintain this copter without owning a soldering iron at all. And many people in the hobby are shaking their heads right now and going, what, are you kidding me? But there are people out there with more money than time who just want to fly and don't want to learn to solder and don't want to maintain a copter and don't want to be taking their copter down to the hobby shop every week when they break something. They just want to be able to buy a copter, fly it, and if it breaks, they just put a new part on it and they're ready to go. And this copter, I think that's who this copter is for. It is a properly respectable copter in terms of speed, handling, raceability, and so on. It has very high-end fit and finish, and it is maintainable without a lot of electronics know-how. If I had to pick one of these copters that I wanted to fly on a daily basis, I think it would be the Jaguar. And that's despite the fact that I'm a little turned off by, Jaguar. This copter has the widest tuning envelope of almost any copter I've ever flown. As I was tuning it, I kept doing different things and waiting for something bad to happen, and nothing bad really happened. The flight characteristics changed, but I really had a lot of latitude to choose how I wanted the copter to fly, rather than how the copter was going to force me to work within its bounds. And in that respect, this is a great choice for someone who is just starting out and maybe doesn't know how to tune and wants a copter that's going to fly very smoothly as they change the PIDs and feel for, you know, what the PIDs do. Or if you just want a copter that out of the box is going to fly very smoothly. That's just despite the fact that I did a pro tune for this copter and I tuned it as best I could. And at the end of the day, I also did a tune for this copter, and I feel like this one flies smoother out of the box. Not out of the box. Well, it flies pretty good out of the box, even on stock PIDs. But then with my tuned PIDs, I think this is the smoothest flying of all three of them. And since that's a factor that I really like when I'm flying, I love a smooth, precise flying copter, even if it's not the fastest copter on the block. And I feel like of these three, that's this one. And that's why this is the one that I probably would fly. If I could find a freaking good place to put the receiver. We have to go back to the Shuriken and talk about integration. The Shuriken is fully integrated, so the ESCs and the motors are separate, but every other piece of electronics is integrated into this main board, and this is about, I think it's $110 to replace this part. And that is a lot of money. And if anything breaks on here, except the receiver, I think the receiver is distinct, but if anything breaks on here, the flight controller, the video transmitter, anything, you're out $110. You can't simply replace one board or one, whatever piece that you need to replace. I'm not sure whether that's true for the FlyPro stack inside the XJaguar. When I've tried to look up the FlyPro stack, which is the electronics that are in here, I haven't ever found the individual boards being sold separately. It seems like that's something that would happen, that the boards would be sold separately, So if you break the video transmitter, you don't have to buy a whole new stack with ESCs and flight controllers that you don't need. But I haven't ever found a listing for that, and now cue you guys in the comments pointing it out and telling me how dumb I am for not having found it. Sorry, my Google foo has failed me. The stack here is about $130 if you have to replace it. Presumably each of the individual boards would be cheaper than that. And so that brings us to price, and that is where I think the sort of final winner for me is going to get decided. The Jaguar is $307 as of the time of this recording. The Shuriken is $259, and it comes with a receiver. The Jaguar does not come with a receiver, so that $307, that's going to go up to at least, let's say, $325, $330, maybe even $340, depending on which receiver you get. $259 for the Shuriken with receiver, and the QQ190 ready to fly with the camera upgrade that I recommend is $479. And so that really makes the decision crystal clear, I think. Because none of these copters absolutely knocks the others out of the park in terms of flight performance. The Shuriken, I think, is the fastest in a straight line and maybe the fastest around the track, but it's not necessarily the most enjoyable to fly, at least for me. The QQ190 coming in at $479, if you have the ability to wield a soldering iron or the desire to learn, I think this is not the one for you. If you don't want to learn to solder and you just want a copter that you can stick new parts on when they break, and maybe they'll never even break because, I mean, TBS is no slouch in the hardware department, this is the copter for you. And this is probably the best option on the market in terms of a high quality, great fit and finish, ready to race, top tier hardware, don't have to solder, ready to fly, that I can think of anyway. Between these guys, the Jaguar at $307 plus a receiver is $330 or $340 compared to the Shuriken for almost $100 less than that. Despite the fact that I think I like the way this one flies better, I would probably get the Shuriken because it's not $100 better. It's almost a little bit insulting that the Jaguar asks you to pay $100 more and then makes you assemble the thing. Whereas here's the Shuriken, that's $100 less, and it comes ready to fly. So count your labor hours in there, it's even cheaper. So then that is going to be my winner of these three, the Holybro Shuriken X1, which is not to say that the other two are bad. They all have excellent qualities about them, but if I had to pick one winner, taking everything into consideration, including flight characteristics, cost, and the fact that I'm not afraid of a soldering iron if I need to get in here and replace a motor, this is my winner. Let me know in the comments which one you think is best, and I know some of you guys are out there thinking, what about the Diatone Crusader GT2? What about the Eachine Wizard? And I'm working on that. You're going to see them on my channel coming up in the future. It used to be you couldn't get a good ready to fly. It was worth flying, and I think we can see now that has certainly changed. Every one of these copters is a spectacular copter. Every one of these copters is better than the best copter you could have built a year and a half ago if you were a top-tier hand builder. So, I mean, it's fantastic that we can get a copter this good at this price if we want to. So there's good things to come. For now, though, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Happy flying.